Before this video starts, I just want to say this video contains massive spoilers for the prologue in Chapter 1 of Project Eden's Garden, as well as Despair Time and Danganronpa V3. So, as always, proceed with caution. Now, with that out of the way, I have just one thing to say. I hold myself in contempt! Hello everyone, it's Ocean Unknown, and welcome back to my channel. Well, today, once again, I'm Wolfgang Akere, the ultimate lawyer. Here's my card. And I fucking died! Today we will be discussing Chapter 1 of Project Eden's Garden and the very tragic story of my favorite character in the game, Wolfgang. First, I want to say how happy and proud I am of everyone working on Project Eden's Garden. They absolutely crushed it. And please, if I may request anything of Seabunny Nation, it is to please show the cast and crew of Project Eden's Garden some love. Without further ado, let's start the show. Wolfgang Akere is one of the ultimate students that was kidnapped and forced into the Project Eden's Garden killing game. He was accepted into Eden's Garden Academy and given the title of the ultimate lawyer. Lawyer? I hardly know her. He is the oldest of the cast of Project Eden's Garden at 22 years old, meaning he found immense success as a lawyer at a shockingly young age. For anyone wondering, it takes 7 years of higher education to become a lawyer, 4 in undergrad, 3 in law school. This would mean that Wolfgang started studying to be a lawyer at least 14. We learned through his free time events that this is, in fact, the case, as Wolfgang spent his entire adolescence pursuing law, as he found a passion for law and order in his childhood. Defending over 200 clients without dropping a single case, he promises that the truth will always bring a conclusion. His character bio states, an earnest and soft-spoken gentleman, who makes sure that everyone is fairly represented, that only facts and logic drive the discussion, even if at times it becomes counterproductive in the trials he participates in. His birthday is October 22nd, making him a Libra. He's the tallest of the cast at 6'2", likes daytime TV and gold, dislikes alcohol and lies, and is voiced by the incredibly talented Dazon. Now, with all that exposition out of the way, let's talk about the prologue. After being kidnapped, Damon and Eva find the dining hall after seeing some legs through the vent when they were in the boiler room.
That's called foreshadowing.
They find Grace as she mentions seeing a man in a suit. And then Best Boy arrives!
Skip. But when does this game get fucking good?
Upon learning that Wolfgang is a lawyer, Damon, who sees more value in skills and talents he deems as worthy to the greater good of society, takes an instant liking to him, but grows curious about him because of his young appearance contradicting his talent, although he at first isn't very willing to reveal any personal information. When Toshiko, the youngest person in the cast at only 14, introduces herself, Wolfgang is quick to be even more cautious and careful with his words than he was before, telling everyone to watch what they say around her because of her young age. This becomes a very common theme with Wolfgang, as you'll see later on. He's very protective of certain members of the cast, and there's a very important reason why.
That's called foreshadowing.
Wolfgang joins Grace, Damon, Eva, and Toshiko in exploring their whereabouts, in which Damon calls out Wolfgang for being quite nonchalant about this whole ordeal. He explains that he's not too concerned about the kidnappings because there's nothing he can do about it. This also becomes a common pattern with Wolfgang. That's called foreshadowing. When the group hears Eloise sobbing, Wolfgang is insistent on helping her, saying, "Don't be so heartless. There could be someone in need. To the girl crying, please excuse my friend here. None of us are here to hurt you, so I think you should come out. Hiding will only make you more scared." As Eloise explains that she got panicked after being kidnapped, Wolfgang reassures her that she's not alone in her anxieties. Damon is quick to retort, "That's probably the last thing she wants to hear. And since when are we friends?" Eloise, however, understands Wolfgang's sentiments and says she'd rather be alone right now to process her feelings. To help her out, Wolfgang tells her that he'll ask everyone to meet in the courtyard once he has introduced himself to everyone, so Eloise doesn't have to worry about anything. Damon says in his internal monologue, Wolfgang knew how to handle that situation pretty well, or maybe he just knows how to handle people in general. I guess it's admirable. As shown in this scene, Wolfgang easily puts himself in a leadership position and makes strong and firm decisions very naturally, which is also a common theme with him.
That's called
Continuing on with the introductions, Wolfgang expresses his joy, even in this stressful and uncertain situation, to be around fellow Ultimate students. He shows a lot of compassion towards the other students, such as complimenting Ulysses for being a scholar while also showing concern for his health after he falls asleep out of nowhere, and starting engaging non-judgmental conversations with Ingrid about her clientele as a modern-day blacksmith. After everyone meets up in the courtyard and Toshiko introduces Wolfgang as the ultimate lawyer, everyone is further drawn to him. As the students find Kara's dummy, Tozu, the headmaster, reveals that this mock crime scene and investigation is a perfect reconstruction of a murder that happened many years ago where an ultimate student was stabbed 28 times. More on all of that later. During the investigation, Wolfgang insists that they analyze the crime scene as thoroughly as possible, saying, "Not for the sake of entertaining the people who kidnapped us, but for the sake of the victim. After all, this was based on a real murder, was it not?" While Damon is hesitant to believe anything Tozu said because of the weird circumstances of the situation, Wolfgang is adamant about treating this case with utmost care and detail. When the group is brought down to the trial room, I do want to point out that Tozu calls Wolfgang smart for complying with his demands, which back in December of 2022 perked up my little ears and became part of the reason he was included in my Mastermind prediction video. That was so long ago, back before you all were called Seabunnies and when Wolfgang was still alive. Anyways, the mock trial begins. Wolfgang naturally commands the beginning of the trial, answering everyone's questions and moving the conversation to get more answers on how Kara was killed. Although when the Ultimates start to get off course, Damon is the one who sets the record straight, such as explaining that the murder weapon was the bloody knife found at the crime scene. When Kai suggests that they've already figured out the case, Wolfgang swiftly says, No, not yet.
Please understand, I'm proud of everyone's hard work so far. Because of you, we're one step closer to bringing the victim justice. However, we should think of this case like an equation. Knowing how it works is only half the struggle. Now we need to figure out why.
As in the pre-trial section of the prologue, Wolfgang is very supportive of everyone and validates their input in the mock trial. Of course, he wants to get to the conclusion and bring justice to the victim, but he recognizes that this is what everybody wants too. This is a complete contrast to Damon, who is quite rude and brutally honest with his methods of trying to get everyone to stay on track.
Ooh, I sense some character foils happening here.
He's also very calm in the first half of the trial when it comes to confrontation, such as when Grace yells at him to use his brain and he just says, "My apologies."
But then we get to the back half.
As the Ultimates have answered how Kara was killed, Winona brings up the fact that because Kara was the one carrying the gun found at the crime scene, that Kara was killed in self-defense. As soon as she says that, Wolfgang says, "There's no excuse. There's no justifying murder. Killing a woman is the worst thing a man can do." The last part will become very important later. Anyways, Wolfgang starts to get very, very tense as he says,
"There's no excuse. There never was an excuse. 28 stab wounds. No girl, no person should ever suffer Kara's fate."
Everyone turns their attention to Wolfgang's sudden change in demeanor and insistence on figuring out the motive behind Kara's murder, with Winona arguing back,
"I am not going this far for a fictional murder case."
But Wolfgang snaps back at her saying,
"You turn in a half-finished exam, Winona. An essay without its conclusion. This isn't about efficiency, this is about being right. Or do you, a supposed entrepreneur, not value integrity?"
As the group follows suit and discusses the killer's possible motives and question if this really was self-defense, Wolfgang continues by saying that whatever the killer's motive was, it doesn't change the fact that they have blood on their hands. When Jet calls him out for being a little pressed, understatement of the year, Wolfgang yells,
"Silence! I won't allow this!"
This leads to a non-stop debate section with Wolfgang shouting,
You expect me to stay calm? This was the sadistic killing of one of humanity's brightest. This killer, dead or alive, deserves to be brought to justice!
In the pathos route, Damon refutes Eva's claim that it isn't worth it to trust Wolfgang's claims of justice by saying, expertise shouldn't be overlooked here. If there's anyone to believe, it's the lawyer. Wolfgang has spent his life in the courtroom and on the crime scene. He'd understand the criminal mind in ways we can't possibly imagine. He was even emotionally invested in a murder case he'd never seen before. If his lawyer's intuition tells us that the killer was in the wrong, then we have no reason to disagree. We're all ultimates for a reason. We need to trust in talent. Everyone jumps to sing Wolfgang's praises and how they vow to help him in the trial.
Right on! Team Wolfgang all the way!
However, noticeably, they are all either undermining Damon's contributions, like Cassidy, who constantly calls him the bargain bin lawyer, or flat out ignoring his insight. Wolfgang expresses gratitude towards his peers for supporting him. Meanwhile, in the logic route, Damon agrees with Wolfgang that Kara was murdered in a sadistic fashion because, 28 stab wounds. Damon states,
"This was a brutal, savage crime. Wolfgang might be right to be so passionate."
When the mock trial concludes and Tozu reveals the killing game to everyone, Wolfgang comforts Eloise and tries to reassure everyone that no one in this group would ever comply with Tozu's demands.
That's called foreshadowing.
He says, "Do you seriously think we'll abandon our morals so quickly?" As everyone backs up Wolfgang's argument. Tozu retorts back, saying that the group have only known each other for a few hours and that it's irrational to assume that nobody would succumb to murder, saying, "You wouldn't be here all dressed up in that fancy suit if you were so naive." After some time, Wolfgang says that he finally has an answer to Tozu's question about his faith in the other students, in which he answers, "I'll continue to trust them, because they're ultimates. They are charged with the betterment of society. They have proven themselves to be above simple acts of self-interest. We will not succumb, even if you trap us, fire guns at us, and force us to endure farcical courtroom procedures." Everyone once again jumps to Wolfgang's defense.
Wow, that seems like a very common theme. Wonder if that'll have any plot importance.
Well, except for Eva and Damon. Eva calls out Wolfgang for being incredibly naive, saying that she has no clue how he made it as a lawyer, with Wolfgang asking what her reasoning is. Noticeably, Wolfgang is sweating in this scene, so he is at least a little bit threatened by Eva's rebuttal and her trying to break apart the group's trust towards each other. She claims that Wolfgang has it all wrong and that ultimates are more likely to put their own self-interest first as opposed to helping others, so it's only a matter of time before someone decides to kill. She also claims that Wolfgang's attempts and successes with bringing the group together will only make everyone weaker, even going as far as accusing him of wanting everyone to be more susceptible to murder so that he can kill them himself. However, before Wolfgang can defend himself, everyone jumps on the bandwagon to defend him. When Damon shares his true feelings that most ultimates are selfish leeches with niche fixations that are basically worthless to society to refute Wolfgang's claims that ultimates are tasked with making the world a better place, everyone has completely turned against him, which ends the prologue.
So before we move on to chapter 1, where we learn a whole lot more about Wolfgang and why he is the way he is, let's discuss all of what just happened in the prologue.
The prologue does a wonderful job introducing us to everyone, and Wolfgang is no exception. If anything, the prologue introduces us to Wolfgang the most out of everyone, and it does so for a reason. Ever since Project Eden's Garden was conceived, fans knew from the get-go that Wolfgang was going to be the foil character for Damon. Their talents are directly connected with each other as a debater and a lawyer, but even the distinction between these two titles are very telling of their characters and how they are perceived. Lawyers traditionally are seen as professional, intelligent, successful, and one of the most respected jobs in society. On the other hand, when you think of a debater, you typically think of some high schooler in a sweater vest and khakis playing devil's advocate. This may bring to mind some adjectives: juvenile, immature, temporary. Wolfgang's title as the ultimate lawyer makes him appear to be a more refined and experienced person, whereas Damon's does the complete opposite. Additionally, Wolfgang's personality is much more like a protagonist despite his role as the foil to Damon. He's protective, positive, and most of all, hopeful. Also, shout out to my best friend who pointed out that his hairstyle mimics an ahoge, a stylistic choice given to all protagonists of the Danganronpa franchise and many fangans. However, Wolfgang's is upside down. Another very cool detail with the parallels between Wolfgang and Damon is the seating arrangement of the class trial. Notably, Wolfgang's podium is at the bottom center of the circle, where the main character's podium typically is, whereas Damon's is in the top center, right in front of the mastermind's throne. To put it lightly, Wolfgang walks a fine line between the hopeful hero and the intimidating rival, which we also see in how he responds to the killing game. His stated intentions are to protect everyone and peacefully resist the killing game by having faith in everyone's morals and good hearts, but having too much blind faith in others can lead to catastrophe. However, Wolfgang is not actively fighting against the killing game, just resisting it through faith and words. While Wolfgang is praised for his seemingly baseless belief in everyone, Damon and Eva are despised for their contrary argument that self-interest matters more than the greater good in a life or death situation. This praise is also a part of the reason why Wolfgang easily falls into this leadership position amongst the ultimates. They all naturally respect him as a lawyer and gravitate towards him due to his kind, caring, and soft-spoken demeanor at the start, which leads to them all praising him in the trial and taking his side against both Tozu and Eva and Damon. This leadership role also follows him into chapter 1, but we'll get to that shortly.
In terms of his character, Wolfgang is introduced through his bio in first half of the prologue as very calm and collected, intelligent, logical, and kind, as seen by how he treats the women in the cast, especially the younger and more emotionally fragile ones. Wolfgang is incredibly protective towards women and children, which we learn in chapter 1 has to do with his upbringing and studies as a lawyer.
But then the back half happened.
Wolfgang's outburst in the trial completely contradicts how he has acted up until that point. His calm and collected demeanor has completely vanished as he demands justice for Kara. Sure, his strong sense of justice and desire to right people's wrongs does make sense as he is a lawyer, and him saying, "No girl, no person should ever suffer Kara's fate," ties with his motives of protecting women and children specifically, but his intensely emotional response to the mere accusation that Kara wasn't a victim leads me to believe that there's a lot more below the surface of Wolfgang's feelings. It also completely contradicts his bio that claims he only uses logic and evidence to examine a crime and reach a conclusion. Many fans of Project Eden's Garden have theorized that Wolfgang's heavy emotions in the trial were because he actually has a connection to this case, ranging from Kara being his sister, or this case being one he studied before, and more, but I'll get to my theory about his connection to Kara when I discuss his backstory. Speaking of Kara, it is worth noting that Kara's case, along with Wolfgang's iconic line,
28 stab wounds,
is a reference to Detroit Become Human.
28 stab wounds. You didn't want to leave him a chance, huh? Did you feel anger? Hate?
In that game, one of the protagonists, Connor, is a detective investigating homicides and android deviancy. The interrogation scene between him and an android who stabbed their owner 28 times has been memed to death.
28 stab wounds.
And it was honestly so funny to hear this reference in the prologue. Not only that, but another protagonist in Detroit Become Human is named Kara, and in the 2022 Halloween official art, Wolfgang is dressed as Connor. Last but not least, I'll go even further with this point in a future video, but Wolfgang is a giant hypocrite. He is adamant about spreading kindness and sticking together, yet in the trial he yelled at everyone and expressed extreme amounts of anger. He's incredibly smart, yet so incredibly naive. Also, since he is a lawyer, someone who has so much first-hand experience with the law, crime, death, and the lowest of the lows in humanity, you would think Wolfgang would be more on edge in a killing game and around his peers. However, Wolfgang is the exact opposite. Open, understanding, and naive.
All in all, the prologue does a fantastic job establishing Wolfgang's character and flaws and setting up his eventual downfall in chapter 1.
Just as everyone is about to follow Jean to explore their surroundings more, Wolfgang pipes up. He says, "Are we able to trust those two?" Pointing at Eva and Damon. He continues, "I am only being mindful of my peers. Forcing them to put up with a threatening person or thing would be morally dishonest." And on the subject of dishonesty, let's be clear, it was not me sowing discourse last night. Isn't that right, Eva? Trying to crush our spirits during such a vulnerable moment. And how could anyone forget his input? Damon could have at least kept his opinions to himself.
But you didn't.
He belittled everyone's talents in order to elevate his own. Clearly, neither of those two have our best interests at heart. Everyone begins to agree with Wolfgang that having someone labeled the ultimate liar around to investigate with them would lead to a lot of fear and anxiety.
I will say, however, with the knowledge of Eva's true talent, this scene is a lot more interesting because the ultimate liar is a title that she gave to herself.
Wolfgang suggests that Eva and Damon stay in the dining hall with someone keeping watch. However, Diana makes a point to give them a chance, including telling Wolfgang everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Wolfgang caves in and lets Eva and Damon join the group investigation. However, Wolfgang is clearly annoyed. Outside of Eva and Damon, Winona is also hesitant to blindly follow along with Wolfgang's plans.
Says the CEO billionaire. As Daz said in his playthrough of chapter 1, "Hey Pot, the kettle called." And that's another hint from my next video.
As Tozu explains that there's a secret room for the Ultimates to uncover, Wolfgang insists that Tozu's announcement was simply a tool to manipulate them. Despite this, he also says that exploring the unknown room can also be a first step to resisting the killing game. Damon completely disagrees with him, saying that listening to anything Tozu said, including exploring new areas, is complying with Tozu. Here, Wolfgang says something very, very interesting. It's not an act of investigating that matters, but our reason for investigating. In the pharmacy, Wolfgang once again shares that he's confident that no one will use the pharmacy for malicious or deadly purposes. As he tells Damon, you should be confident too. However, we know that Wolfgang once again is being a hypocrite because he doesn't trust Eva or Damon. At least within his naive statements, he sprinkled in a jab at Damon's ego. Later on, when everyone gets their own virtual profile on their Tozu trinkets, Wolfgang confirms that the information in his profile is correct. However, his wording of all the details of my talent is a little suspicious. Is there more that meets the eye about Wolfgang's work as a lawyer? We don't know currently, but I'm sure it'll be relevant soon. Damon is irritated by Wolfgang and everyone else's nonchalant attitudes towards the people behind the killing game knowing so much about them. When Eva convinces everyone that the profiles will do more harm than good and looking at them would mean taking Tozu's bait, Wolfgang argues that Eva's claims will only cause more panic. He further pins his argument on the fact that Eva is the ultimate liar and that they can't trust anything she says.
Listen, he has a point, but Wolfgang once again is being a little silly here.
Eva says she's just trying to prevent any murders from happening while also calling out Wolfgang for his behavior during the mock trial. When Eva gets exposed for being the ultimate mathlete instead of the ultimate liar by Winona, everyone starts praising Wolfgang again for noticing that something was off about Eva from the get-go. The only character who gives any credit to Winona is Ulysses, which is honestly really sad.
Now here's the thing. Wolfgang, sure, he is very helpful, smart, charismatic, handsome, and did heed warnings about Eva, but he did literally nothing in this scene. Why are we treating him like he's fucking God?
Personally, I think Wolfgang, even with how overly trusting he is aware of how wrong this is. He's just trying to hide how uncomfortable he is behind his calm and proper exposition, which is further proven by how quickly, after all the praise he got, he's like, hey, let's get out of here. The next day, when Desmond gathers everyone to address the broken doorknobs and how to protect each other, Wolfgang critiques him for finding out this information in the wrong way, since Desmond opens some of their doors, causing them to be startled. He then tells Desmond to consult him first about anything concerning.
Hey guys, are we at a beach with stormy weather? 'Cause that's a red flag. Hey Wolfgang, what the fuck?
So based on this comment, Wolfgang at least partially likes this power he has over the other ultimates. While I can understand his intentions are for the greater good of everything, this sentiment is really strange and puts him in even more of an unbalanced position of power. Additionally, for someone who is always talking about the greater good and helping everyone, he is noticeably quiet when everyone is bullying Eva, both in the pharmacy and in the roommate discussion. It is, however, worth noting that one character uses Wolfgang's sentiments to help Eva, that being Diana, aka Best Girl. The next morning, the Ultimates receive blackmail about another student, and what do you know? Damon gets Wolfgang's. I'm married! Wolfgang's blackmail features a photo of his parents on their wedding day and features this message on the back. Like father, like son. Beneath a sheep's skin hides a wolfish mind.
I know I used this joke in my last Project Ian's Garden video, but you could say he's a Wolfgang in sheep's clothing.
When everyone meets up in the dining hall to discuss the envelopes, Wolfgang is hesitant, saying, everyone, I advise you to be careful with these envelopes, and worrying that these envelopes could have damning information on the students that could cause way more harm than good.
And once again, Wolfgang is doing exactly what he is criticizing Ava for doing.
After Tozu explains the murder motive of the blackmail, Wolfgang reassures everyone that they will not let Tozu win, and he encourages everyone to speak with the person whose blackmail they received privately and to give everyone a chance. He says, I can assure you we are not horrible people. Our actions can easily be misconstrued by our kidnappers. We all need to trust each other if we plan on getting through this killing game. If you put faith in your peers, they will put faith in you.
I will say, when I first saw this scene, I was getting major flashbacks to a little unhinged pretty boy who did the exact same thing, and we all know how that turned out. So I was quite concerned with where this was going, but now looking back, I think Wolfgang once again had the best intentions, but underestimated how wrong this could go.
The majority feel like Wolfgang's idea will benefit everyone and praise him once again. However, as always, Winona, Eva, and Damon are apprehensive to his ideas.
After this scene is when we get access to the free time events, so it's time for us to learn a lot more about Wolfgang.
In his first free time event, it's clear that neither he nor Damon really want to talk to each other, so Wolfgang talks about Grace in a in-depth manner. He then asks Damon how he earned his talent as the ultimate debater, since he's wondering if there's a connecting piece between all the students in the killing game. When Damon explains how he started debating, Wolfgang says, "Fascinating, truly fascinating. I couldn't imagine a more ordinary backstory for an ultimate." Damon gets incredibly flustered by Wolfgang's statement and argues that he worked hard for his title, in which Wolfgang refutes, "I never said you didn't struggle. Most ultimates just have very unorthodox beginnings." Damon snidely asks if that includes him, and Wolfgang says, "Of course. Why wouldn't it? I've been drawn to Law and Order ever since I was a child." He explains that courtroom footage in court cases felt like grand storytelling to him as a child, as he became infatuated by the role and power of the barrister, and wished to become a defense lawyer when he grew up. Damon asked him about his experience in law school at such a young age, as Wolfgang reveals that he didn't hit puberty until his first year of law school, further pissing off Damon. Wolfgang mentions that everyone treated him very nicely, despite being the youngest in his classes, but he says, "I might have ruined some people's self-esteem though. I've certainly been dealt a good hand in life, haven't I? Early exposure, unparalleled academic prowess, and most importantly, a vested interest in the subject. It appears fate decided I would become the ultimate lawyer." However, it's clear that Wolfgang is partially toying with Damon with the fate and destiny talk, as he continues, "My track record speaks for itself, either way," as he mentions his 200 successful cases and his experience as a legal assistant before becoming a lawyer. But he then says, "Or maybe I simply entered as a bona fide professional," mocking something Damon said earlier in the conversation. In his inner monologue, it becomes very clear that Damon is jealous of Wolfgang, but rather than feeling an admiration for Wolfgang's success, Damon hates him for his prowess. In their second conversation, Wolfgang starts off by asking Damon if he's taken a romantic liking to anyone, as he states that he's seen Damon sneak a few glances at some of the students. Once again, Wolfgang is messing with Damon to ruffle his feathers. Damon asks Wolfgang what his favorite court case is, but he states that he can't pick one, saying, "As my mother would say, we are only human after all." The very idea of favorites can stump even the smartest individuals. He also says that cases oftentimes blend together because of how many he reads to do his job. When talking about his successes and finding the one detail to drive a testimony, he says, "I get to prove my worth, not only by saving my client, but also showcasing my life's work. And in doing so, I am able to uphold the Akare name." He brings up how his mother was a defense lawyer who won most of her cases, while also gaining attention for her specific clientele. She only defended women and children. He says that his mother cared more about her values than monetary success, as Wolfgang confesses that he also only takes specific clients, people he believes are genuinely innocent. In his inner monologue, Damon is completely baffled by this information, wondering how someone who relies so much on intuition and trusting others like Wolfgang can be successful as a lawyer. In their third interaction, Wolfgang says that he wishes there were less hours in a day so their time stuck in the killing game could go by quickly. But when he was in law school, he felt the complete opposite way. He says, "I've never dwelled on the past as much as I do now, in this uncomfortable present." Damon changes the subject by asking him if how he behaved in the mock trial is how he acts in court, specifically asking him if he's ever yelled at the judge to shut up or cried in the face of the plaintiff, saying it would be incredibly unprofessional if he did. Wolfgang is quick to call Damon out, saying, "Unprofessional, yet you still told the class to trust my lawyer's judgment." Damon says he only defended Wolfgang as a means to an end, to which Wolfgang replies, "I see. Weaponizing my feelings in order to skew the debate. You pursued a truth you did not believe. That's really no different to telling a lie." Damon calls out his hypocrisy since lawyers, depending on their case, have to lie to get the job, but Wolfgang insists that he only tells the truth. I think if you showed Wolfgang we both reached for the gun from Chicago, I think he would combust. Damon asks Wolfgang if it's antithetical to bring his personal beliefs into his cases, in which he says, "It's true lawyers must build walls around their hearts, but human hands cannot create flawless things. Walls crack and degrade, and time will eventually expose a gap for the lawyer's conscience to escape." Damon is still not satisfied with Wolfgang's response and continues to ask him if he acts the way he did in the mock trial in professional settings, and Wolfgang says no. Damon assumes his behavior in the mock trial was because of the ultimates, but Wolfgang states, "You're putting words in my mouth. How I've acted has nothing to do with the people around me. I simply can't always be the man I am in the courtroom. Not now. Not in the killing game." He leaves, as Damon thinks, if I were to say the same thing, I'd be lambasted on the spot. Why does Wolfgang hold himself to such different standards? Has it not occurred to him how unfair that is to me? Or maybe it has, and he just doesn't care.
Maybe he just doesn't want to talk about it, because I have a sneaking suspicion that Wolfgang got intensely emotional in the trial because of the crime scene, especially since he tried to say he can't be himself in the killing game when discussing the mock trial, but that was before the killing game was revealed to the students. As much as there are double standards between Wolfgang and Damon needs to shut up sometimes.
Lastly, in his fourth free time event, Damon and Wolfgang stand in awkward silence until Wolfgang asks Damon why he became a debater. Damon states that debate is valuable to society through arguing politics and ethics, and Wolfgang notices how Damon only talks about his title from a broader perspective on his usefulness to society as opposed to having a personal connection to the talent. Wolfgang asks him why he values importance to society so much, which Damon refuses to answer because he feels like the answer is obvious. Wolfgang replies, I think the reason you chose debate isn't because of the subject matter, but because it elevates your voice above everyone else's. No need to glare, it's nothing to be ashamed of. Damon, clearly angered by Wolfgang's accusations, says that Wolfgang only became a lawyer because of some random courtroom recordings. Wolfgang replies, you misunderstand. Those recordings were not why I wanted to become a lawyer. Rather, they were a subset of the actual reason, as he reveals to Damon that the courtroom recordings were of his mother. He says, ever since I was a little boy, I wanted to be just like her. If she never took up law, I probably wouldn't be here right now. Wolfgang then brings up the controversy around his mom's specific clientele and how because her first murder trial was accessible to the public, so many other lawyers deemed her unprofessional. However, he states that her skills were unmatched, with her first client being acquitted of first-degree murder on the basis of self-defense. He states, I believe my mother is an example of what lawyers should be, pursuers of the truth, who defended the world's most vulnerable no matter the cost. Damon, stop being a hater! If I can pick up where she left off and issue in an era where the lawyer's conscience is rewarded, not punished, then I will have achieved my purpose in life. Meanwhile, as expected, Damon thinks Wolfgang is out of his mind and that Wolfgang's ideas of what a lawyer should be would spell the end of criminal justice.
I'm gonna leave my thoughts and theories about Wolfgang's free time events for a bit later in this video, since we get a bit more insight and implications into his relationship with his mother and also with Damon, so stay tuned. Now back to Damon being a piece of work.
After meeting with Tozu to ask for hints about Wolfgang's blackmail, Damon thinks to himself about how Tozu told him that the clue has already been revealed, and he thinks that could only be talking about his behavior in the mock trial. He thinks to himself, the other students witnessed the same thing I did, and yet now they treat Wolfgang like their leader. I hate this. I should have never come to that dickhead's defense.
Damon calling someone else a dickhead has got to be the biggest ironic statement ever. Honestly, ever.
When he returns to the dorm hallways, he overhears Grace, Ulysses, Wolfgang, and Winona moving their luggage out of their rooms as they are switching roommates. We learn in Ulysses' second free time event that Wolfgang isn't the best when it comes to being a good roommate, as Grace excitedly declares that Wolfgang is her new roommate, saying he's good with his words too. Real cunning with his linguistics.
Ow.
The next morning, Kai mentions that his blackmail has been sorted out, which implies that some students have been taking Wolfgang's advice. During the laundry scene, Ingrid talks Wolfgang up greatly, calling him a house husband.
I had to sneak in my favorite line in the chapter.
But he doesn't think he can tackle the responsibilities of a parent. He also can't do laundry.
Hey! Don't pour the entire bottle of detergent in!
You weren't supposed to?
Later on, Damon shares Wolfgang's blackmail with Eva, completely going against what Wolfgang suggested. Eva says that his blackmail implies that his father did something bad, and Wolfgang takes after his father's qualities or actions. Afterwards, his distrust of Damon and Eva is on full display when he questions why the two were speaking privately, in which Damon says they were talking about the blackmail, like Wolfgang told them to. His disposition, however, takes a full 180 when he encourages the group to go to Jet and Cassidy's gaming tournament to create memories and build trust with each other, despite his own hesitations. In the end, he still encourages everyone to attend as a means of going against the killing game.
And then we get to the next day.
During the tournament, the power goes out. As the group goes downstairs to find the generator, Damon and Kai enter the boiler room after hearing someone running away. After a few minutes, The lights in the dining hall come back on, which illuminate the boiler room, causing Damon and Kai to see what was laying at their feet. Wolfgang Akere looked over the boiler room platform, completely still, completely silent. The ultimate lawyer, unmistakably dead. As everyone is called to the boiler room, Damon thinks about how he will never know what Wolfgang's blackmail truly means. As everybody begins to trickle into the room, everyone is screaming and crying, or as Damon calls it, a cacophony of wails. The Ultimates start to investigate the crime, with Damon and Eva investigating the body together. Damon thinks Wolfgang did everything in his power to make us outcasts, and make the worst of us. At times, I even hated him for it. But this brought no relief to either of us.
But I don't know about that.
They discover that Wolfgang's face is contorted horrifically. He has burn marks on his hands, a giant bruise and a small red mark on his neck, and a letter in his pocket asking him to meet someone in the boiler room at 8:15 a.m., likely to discuss his blackmail.
But wait, but Damon has Wolfgang's blackmail. Well...
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Upon seeing the letter, they question why Wolfgang didn't have any apprehensions about going to the boiler room, and while they do wonder if it was his genuine naivety, Damon says it's likely that he was desperate about his blackmail. Later on during the investigation, Grace has been guarding Wolfgang's room, his last known whereabouts. When Grace gives in and lets Damon, Desmond, and Eloise into Wolfgang's room, we see that Wolfgang's room not only was super aesthetically pleasing, but also that some of Wolfgang and Grace's clothes were on the floor. Now, while this is understandable because of Ulysses saying that Wolfgang isn't the best at picking up after himself, the writers of Project Eden's Garden confirmed that, Wolfgang and Grace had a fun night.
And then a few hours later, he died.
Grace tells Damon that Wolfgang actually intended on going to the tournament with her, but he woke up with an awful stomachache that made him unable to get out of bed.
My tummy hurts. And I'm mad at the government.
Damon brings up how Grace's testimony contradicts Wolfgang's hesitation and claims of being too busy to attend the tournament, to which Grace jokes that he just wanted another round of pachinko.
By the way, I headcanon that Wolfgang was an avid pachinko player in the Killing Game because he was doing his own free time events with everyone else for the research that he mentioned to Damon about learning the origins of everyone's talents, which ties back to the idea that Wolfgang is a lot more like the traditional helpful protagonist compared to the arrogant, cynical, and insecure Damon.
Both Grace and Damon realized that Wolfgang was being dishonest about his busyness and sickness, and that he was deliberately hiding information from Grace, someone he seemingly trusted. Lastly, Toshiko mentions that she saw Wolfgang that morning while grabbing headache medicine for Ingrid. He told her that he was going to the tournament, and that he was grabbing a load of laundry, yet another contradiction to Wolfgang's own words in Grace's account. As the students take the elevator down to the trial, Damon thinks to himself that he never held Wolfgang to such high regard, but it still feels empty without him. As he also says, "There's no way I can place my faith in the other people here. There's no way they'll come to the correct conclusion. Our survival depends on me." I'm bringing up this line because it's another line that twists Wolfgang's ideals and words, as he puts so much faith in others, so Damon vows to never do that. He continues on his little obnoxious, self-absorbed rant by saying, "To think this tragedy could have been avoided had people just listened to me. But who was it that encouraged everyone to turn on me? Who was it that encouraged everyone to trust each other?" If Wolfgang hadn't been so naive, if he had just told people to protect themselves rather than each other, then maybe he would still be here.
I cannot even tell you the amount of times after Damon said some shit like this where I just yelled, "David, shut up!" I want to be clear. I like Damon as a very dislikable and unreliable protagonist. I genuinely like all of the characters of this game, but that doesn't mean that I like his excessive superiority complex and rude thoughts about the other characters. Anyways, the class trial to uncover the truth behind Wolfgang Akere's murder begins.
The group first figures out that Wolfgang lied about being sick so he could go to the boiler room to discuss the letter he received without causing Grace to worry. The group calls out Wolfgang's hypocrisy for hiding a lot of information while openly telling everyone to reveal their blackmail. However, Toshiko and Diana bring up that it's also likely that Wolfgang wanted to protect Grace in case he got hurt by the person he was trying to confront. Later on, Jean confesses that Wolfgang received his blackmail and they had a very peaceful and productive conversation about it. The group comes to a conclusion that Diana murdered Wolfgang because she doesn't have a concrete alibi, and that the knife found at the crime scene was actually wielded by Wolfgang as a means to defend himself, and that he stabbed Diana during a scuffle. Damon says, at that point, it doesn't matter how much of an optimist he is. He'd know better than to come unarmed. However, Damon realizes that Wolfgang was lured into the boiler room much later than the time he died, 80 minutes to be exact, which helps prove that Diana didn't kill him.
But something definitely happened.
Damon tells Diana that her testimony as the last person to see Wolfgang alive is the evidence needed to solve this case, as he tells her to do it not for him or herself, but for Wolfgang's sake. As Diana confesses,
all I could do was watch him die.
Diana explains that she received a letter from the killer pretending to be Wolfgang, stating that Wolfgang had received her blackmail and that he wanted to talk with her about it. The group also concludes that the note in Wolfgang's pocket was also from the killer. Even though Diana had her fears, she went to the boiler room because she was scared of disappointing Wolfgang if the letter was actually written by him. When Diana walked into the boiler room, she saw Wolfgang lying in the water and groaning to himself. Wolfgang sees Diana and says, "It's you. I really am finally meeting you. Please forgive me."
I would be doing an absolute disservice to you all if I didn't at least play some parts of this scene because Snow and Dazon absolutely killed it. Well, poor choice of words, but still.
Please forgive me for what I've become. Despite how hard I tried, how much I wanted it to be true, I could never become you. I will always be a failure.
Diana tried to help Wolfgang get out of the boiler room and reassured him that everything would be okay. But suddenly,
when he reached inside his blazer,
Bring her back. Bring her back!
Diana reached for the taser gun that was left in the boiler room to defend herself, but she couldn't bring herself to hurt him. Wolfgang continues talking, saying,
I'm not like you. I'll never be like you. I won't give up until the world knows. I won't give up until everyone knows me as...
all of a sudden, everything turned white. Everything in front of me, except Wolfgang. In those few seconds, he became pitch black. And then, so did everything else.
Everybody is completely shocked that Wolfgang would act that way towards anyone, let alone attack someone with a knife, but Jean considers the possibility that Wolfgang was hallucinating. The group puts together the pieces and deduces that the only person who could have killed Wolfgang is Eva. As the trial concludes, everyone puts the pieces together of how Wolfgang was murdered. After Wolfgang encouraged everyone to open up about their blackmail in a private space, Eva lured Wolfgang and Diana to the boiler room at separate times in order to kill Wolfgang and frame Diana. Eva then stole a car battery from Jet's room and the taser gun from Desmond's, and wrapped the battery with an extension cord on top of the generator in the boiler room with parts of the cord sticking out in the vent connecting to the boiler room and the dining hall. That morning, before he could meet the person who sent him the letter, Wolfgang armed himself with a kitchen knife in case he needed to defend himself. When he got to the boiler room, Eva ambushed him by hitting him in the neck with a metal rolling pin, and once he was unconscious, she injected him with a hallucinogenic drug. She placed the taser gun in the boiler room as a red herring and left Wolfgang there and waited for Diana to arrive. When she arrived, Wolfgang attacked Diana in his incapacitated state due to hallucinations. Then, Eva lowered the car battery and extension cord through the vent, hitting the generator. Wolfgang, who was standing in the water in the boiler room, was electrocuted instantly. It is revealed by Tozu that Eva and him made a deal after she figured out the code in the pharmacy that if she committed the first murder, she would get access to the security cameras, which is how she was able to see her own plan of killing Wolfgang play out. She then claims that she killed Wolfgang because if she didn't kill him first, somebody would have killed her. She says, "His constant jeering at me of the few mistakes I'd make, while the rest of you followed his lead." And she says that if he were still alive, he would have accused her of being a killer no matter if the evidence pointed her way or not, and everyone would believe him. She continues, "Because of Wolfgang, I was isolated from everyone else. He turned me into an easy target for murder." She also claims that the only reason she chose to frame Diana was because of her loyalty to Wolfgang, but everyone starts to believe that it's possible that Eva killed him because with Wolfgang out of the picture, she could get away with murder a lot easier. However, contradicting all of this and creating some beautiful symbolism and irony, whose podium does she grab onto in an effort to stop her execution? Wolfgang's.
This is a lot of stuff I will go into further detail about in my next 2 Project Eden's Garden videos.
After Eva's execution, Diana feels as though it's her fault that both Wolfgang and Eva are dead because she didn't get Wolfgang out of the water. Diana says, "Wolfgang's kindness. I can't let anyone forget it," as she vows to fulfill the life he couldn't live and continue his legacy by ending the killing game.
What Diana's heartfelt, though granted oddly timed speech marking the end of Chapter 1, let's talk about how Wolfgang not only was the perfect first victim of this story, but also his character and his impact.
Let's start with the obvious. Since the title of Chapter 1 is Beneath the Veil of Hypocrisy, and Wolfgang is a major character in this chapter, Wolfgang's character focuses a lot on his hypocrisy.
Everyone in this game is a hypocrite, which may or may not be a future video topic, but right now we are focusing on Wolfgang only.
While we may never know Wolfgang's true intentions, this is just my personal interpretation of his character. On the surface, Wolfgang is incredibly trusting of other people and sees the best in everyone. However, he sees no problem with questioning Damon and Eva's intentions and critiquing their actions at any given moment. While I definitely understand Wolfgang's hesitations about trusting Damon and Eva because at that point in Chapter 1, Wolfgang, along with everybody else, was under the impression that Eva was the ultimate liar, and yeah, what Damon said was incredibly cruel and unnecessary, but other characters were able to be kind to Damon and Eva despite what happened in the prologue, like Ingrid and Diana. I do genuinely believe Wolfgang had the best intentions and had the group's safety and survival as his top priority. However, his distrust of Damon and Eva contradicts his motives of doing everything for the greater good of everyone. I understand where his head was at, but it wasn't the best idea. Also, Wolfgang is a very contradictory character because he's very intelligent, yet very naive and innocent. Despite being someone who is surrounded by crime in his everyday professional life, Wolfgang has such strong faith in people, especially in the Ultimates, which is why he's so calm and collected about the killing game. He encourages everyone to get along, yet he never spoke up when Eva was being bullied by Grace and Kai, something that directly caused animosity between the students and became one of Eva's reasons to commit murder. Now, do I think Wolfgang actually hated Damon or Eva? No. I think he was bothered by their cynicism, but overall wanted what was best for everyone, even if it meant doing something slightly immoral like what he said at the beginning of Chapter 1 to them. Speaking of immoral acts, I do want to bring up how Winona questioned after the trial if Wolfgang bringing a knife with him to the boiler room was really for self-defense like the students concluded. I feel like Project Eden's Garden included this line for a reason, and I have a theory. Yes, the knife was partially for self-defense, but also that Wolfgang was willing to threaten, but not kill, whoever had his blackmail due to the severity of his message. The possibility of Wolfgang having more sinister intentions is also hinted at in his imitation art piece. In this artwork, we see Wolfgang about to stab a different version of himself, one that is caked in white light and praying. First of all, this piece is a reference to Shakespeare's Hamlet, specifically the scene when Hamlet refuses to kill his father Claudius when he is given the opportunity because he is praying, which further connects with Wolfgang's conflicted relationship with his father. The reference photo for this artwork is from the 2009 TV film adaptation of the Royal Shakespeare Company's production of Hamlet, with David Tennant as Hamlet and Patrick Stewart as Claudius, but also as the ghost of Hamlet's father. The violin Wolfgang is also wearing a crown and holding a knife, which one connects to Hamlet, as Hamlet is the Prince of Denmark. But not only has Wolfgang been depicted with a crown before, in the post announcing his victory in the Woes of Marches and Ides contest, but Kara's imitation piece also has a crown, further pointing towards Kara and Wolfgang's possible connection. The knife and different facial expressions also reference Wolfgang's circumstances before his death, and the use of white light further references his death. While white light can often symbolize holiness and purity, the use of it in this piece could potentially reference the concept of seeing a white light before you die. Also, Wolfgang's imitation piece is the only one that answers the question, what are you, in a different way. Everyone else's is a statement like a lie, a foe, a sacrifice. Wolfgang simply reads, not like you, and features both the sheep and the wolf. If this artwork and Winona's accusations prove anything, it's that Wolfgang definitely has a lot more to his character than we have seen so far. A lot of people interpret the artwork to symbolize Wolfgang killing a part of himself, or possibly his attempts of repressing the wolfish mind mentioned in his blackmail, especially considering only the praying Wolfgang has his sheep pin, and the violent Wolfgang has a wolf's tail. Even though I do believe Wolfgang had the best intentions and genuinely wanted to protect everyone and escape the killing game together, he still has many damaging skeletons in his closet. Regarding his blackmail in various scenes, it's clear that Wolfgang has a fear of being like his father. However, Wolfgang never brings up his father, but it is worth noting that in the prologue, he brings up how easily men forget their wedding anniversary, and while this could have been an easily little throwaway comment, I think this line is a subtle hint to how he views his father and his relationship with his mother. The blackmail also calls Wolfgang a wolf in sheep's clothing, further hinting at Wolfgang's calm and optimistic exterior being exactly that, an exterior. I'd like to believe that Wolfgang genuinely wanted to be the best person he could be and help others despite his connection with his family, and was actively repressing his quote-unquote wolfish nature until the very end. What we do know is that Wolfgang's ideology and many of his character traits come from his mother being his biggest role model. He credits her as the reason he gained immense interest in law and order, and he views his mother as what lawyers should be because she incorporated her own personal conscience into her work. With this information, Wolfgang's focus on asking why instead of asking how in many situations makes a lot of sense. He wishes to understand the reason for doing something as opposed to understanding the action, and it's clear with his actions throughout the game that he values motive and reasoning over the action itself, like with encouraging the group to explore the pharmacy. It's also very clear through his free time events that his moral compass and desire to help others, no matter how people judge or view his methods, comes from his mother. He pressures himself to uphold the Akare name because he wishes to be just like his mother and uphold the idea of justice that she had. His mother's obligation to help women and children only is also the reason why Wolfgang is incredibly protective of the female students who are more sensitive and anxious like Toshiko, Eloise, and Diana. It's likely that they remind Wolfgang of the women his mother would protect and fight for in the courtroom.
Now we're going to get into a bit of theory territory since there's still some unanswered questions about Wolfgang's family, but it's still important to mention.
Wolfgang significantly idolizes his mother and never mentions his father, including his blackmail and also his final scene with Diana. I have a theory that Wolfgang's mother is dead and his father murdered her. Wolfgang's screams asking Diana to bring her back are likely connected to his mother, as before then he claims that he could never become her and how he feels like a failure. That means that while he was hallucinating, instead of Diana, he saw his dead mother. When he attacked Diana, he either realized that his mother wasn't actually there, or based on his last words, "I'm not like you. I'll never be like you." It's possible he may have also hallucinated seeing his father being there with him. The theory that Wolfgang's mother is dead has been basically confirmed by the lead artist's Echo Collection artwork of Wolfgang. The first one features Wolfgang as a child with his mother playing the piano. The caption reads, "You're picking it up so quickly. Maybe you could play something for me in the future." Noticeably, neither Wolfgang or his mother have reflections in the water, which many people interpret as Wolfgang finally being with his mother again in the afterlife. In his second Echo art, Wolfgang is all grown up at the piano, basked in white light once again. He has no reflection, and he is all alone. Considering that the Echo artworks are connected to the imitation art, the Echo pieces have warm and white lighting, just like the two Wolfgangs in his imitation art. The piano might be a cheeky nod to his namesake, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, but I also thought of the video game Amori, which majorly focuses on grief, guilt, and forgiveness. One of the titles for the second Echo piece is Wolfgang Apology, so it's likely that Wolfgang is begging for forgiveness and apologizing to his mother that he couldn't be like her. Another common theory that connects with Wolfgang's relationship with his mother is an explanation for why he behaved so intensely in the mock trial. Many people believe that the real Kara and Wolfgang were related, or that the Kara dummy was intentionally given red hair or killed in a similar way to Wolfgang's mother to remind Wolfgang of her to make him enraged. But my theory is that the real Kara case was a case that Wolfgang's mother was hired for. Additionally, the piano's label in his two Echo art pieces says Haniwa, which is a ceramic figure that is traditionally placed on tombs. Also, two Haniwas are featured on Kara's imitation statement in place of an animal symbol since she doesn't have one, which further connects Kara and Wolfgang. It's possible that Wolfgang knew of this case, but since he said himself that cases blur together easily, he doesn't remember the details, but he remembers the pain. Going back to his final scene, it's also important to note the emotional severity and brutality of how Wolfgang was killed. Due to the hallucinogen and the lengths Eva went to try to get away with killing him, Wolfgang died completely unraveled and nothing like the pristine and kind Wolfgang we knew. Additionally, some fans of Project Eden's Garden have connected Wolfgang's cause of death, instant electrocution, to the death penalty in a court of law, more specifically, the electric chair. This grueling method of murder caused Wolfgang to have not only his dignity, but also his sanity stripped away from him in his final moments. Wolfgang, both dead and alive, had a massive impact on this cast in both a positive way with the majority of the characters, and in a negative way with the likes of Damon and Eva. As I mentioned, Wolfgang isolating Damon and Eva at the beginning of Chapter 1 is the main case of his hypocrisy coming out, but I don't believe he meant to hurt Eva or Damon or had any malicious intentions. He cared more about harmony of the majority of the group, which ended up being one of the reasons Eva decided to kill him. I think if anything, he was scared that Damon or Eva, but Eva especially, would commit a murder but didn't want to frighten the rest of the Ultimates, which is why he was always on high alert around her, like the amount of times he told her she was late. Because he was constantly on guard around Damon and Eva, we got to see more of how he handles serious confrontation or when he's backed into a corner, which oddly fits his bio description of relying on intelligence and logic a lot more than his emotional driven reactions throughout the game. Especially during the free time events, Wolfgang calls out Damon's hypocrisy and faults much easier than in group settings. Maybe because he feels like he has nothing to prove or lose while talking to Damon? I think it's also very important to note how the foils between Damon and Wolfgang persist in Chapter 1. While Wolfgang is a kind and naive idealist, Damon is a cynical realist. Wolfgang attributes a lot of his identity to personal attachment and connection, such as how much his mother means to him, whereas Damon puts such an emphasis on being important to society and a shallow definition of value. Their ideologies completely contradict each other, and neither of them understand how the other could ever think that way. A little note about Wolfgang's relationship with Damon and Eva is that their backstories are also foils. Specifically with Eva, the fact that Wolfgang was well respected as the youngest student in law school, even intimidating many of the other students, is the exact opposite of Eva's experience of being the youngest student on her school's math team, where she was ridiculed and mocked for being smarter than the older kids. Lastly, we still have no clue how Damon actually felt about Wolfgang, and vice versa. In his free time events, Wolfgang felt comfortable enough to fluster Damon in an almost sibling kind of manner, which could have been a way to exert his more dominant position in their conversations, but Damon always had to be hyper-aware of what he said around Wolfgang. As seen in both trials, Damon isn't on guard regarding how he speaks with the other students, as he often speaks in an arrogant tone while trying to explain different pieces of evidence. However, in the Chapter 1 trial, Eva claims that she and Damon disagreed on Wolfgang, saying, "Damon saw the way Wolfgang scolded me and treated me like a bad guy, and he thought I hated him the same way he did." Eva is evidently lying in the scene to frame Damon for Wolfgang's murder in an act of desperation, but Damon claims that he never hated Wolfgang to begin with. He says, "I don't think it's possible for anyone to hate someone like Wolfgang. He was always brave in the face of sheer adversity and encouraged everyone else to act likewise. Wolfgang challenged me to be a better person. Wolfgang challenged all of us to be better people. Damon is such a complicated protagonist because I genuinely don't know if he's lying in this scene to stop Eva from accusing him of murder and to gain sympathy from the rest of the cast, or if he actually had some respect for Wolfgang. Based on his inner monologue, I think he's lying. But I don't think Damon is a completely heartless character, and he deep down knows that Wolfgang wanted the best for everyone. What I do know for sure is that Wolfgang and his death will continue to severely impact Damon in the story. Taking a bit of a detour, Wolfgang's character has two main connections to the symbolism that plays a major part in Project Eden's Garden. Every character in the game has an animal present in their design that represents them. For Wolfgang, he is a sheep. As mentioned before, with his blackmail, demeanor, and his name literally being Wolfgang, Wolfgang is meant to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. We did see him act completely outside of his typical kind disposition in the mock trial and in the scene with Diana, but I think as the game continues, we may learn a lot more about Wolfgang outside of the killing game, kind of like Rantaro from Danganronpa V3. Another connection between Wolfgang and sheep is the concept of herd mentality. While I don't think Wolfgang wanted the group to experience groupthink and herd behavior, which is seen in him asking for ideas about keeping everyone safe, unfortunately the group ended up having a massive herd mentality. I also wanted to bring up that the character who is arguably the most gullible and vocal to the groupthink is Jet, whose animal, a coyote, is the most similar to a wolf. Now to a more sad fact. Sheep often baa as a call to their mother when they're alone, which directly mirrors Wolfgang's behavior in his final moments as he was likely hallucinating his mother. On the topic of Wolfgang's parents, I want to bring up the popular theory that Tozu is Wolfgang's father. I do find it interesting that Tozu wears a ram mask, which is often seen as a more aggressive sheep. Also, during the trial, Tozu does his tea time segment where he asks, "What are sheep good at?" He answers, "Absolutely nothing," calling them lower echelons of the food chain and nothing more than their number tags, essentially calling Wolfgang worthless. Tozu continues, "What of the sheep who still try? The sheep who realize their fate but continue to challenge it all the same? What a shame our sheep had to be so misguided." This is also a direct reference to Wolfgang as he resisted the killing game despite knowing the extreme dangers. Also, this scene becomes a lot more interesting if it turns out that Tozu is Wolfgang's father, because that would mean that Tozu willingly put his own son in a killing game and let him die a brutal death, and he is now fully mocking his son for his hope and resilience.
The last two symbolic connections with Wolfgang's animal being a sheep is actually a perfect segue to the other important symbolism in Project Eden's Garden. The Bible!
Sheep in the Bible symbolize quite a few things. Jesus Christ is often referred to as the Lamb of God in the Bible, and this ties with Wolfgang in a few ways. One, he became established as the leader of the group who can do no wrong, almost like a god. His kindness and ability to see the good in others, as well as his desire to protect the innocent and reward people with a good conscience, is very similar to the concept of loving thy neighbor and forgiveness, which is so crucial to Christianity as a religion. Additionally, as Jesus Christ had 12 disciples, there were 12 characters that followed Wolfgang's ideas, leaving Damon, Eva, and Winona as the outsiders. Also, in the Echo art, Wolfgang is seen on top of water, possibly referencing the concept of Jesus walking on water. This also could potentially add so much more to the Tozu is Wolfgang's father theory. Since Tozu has placed himself in a position of playing God as the figure of the killing game, that would mean that Wolfgang is the son of the god of the killing game. It's also worth noting that sheep are one of the only animals without a defense system and are incredibly reliant on their shepherd. Shepherds are often connected to God, such as in Psalm 23 and 2 Thessalonians 3:3, which state, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Without our Lord our shepherd, we are helpless when our enemy Satan attacks." Tozu, especially with his horned mask, takes the place of both God and Satan in the killing game, and based on these scriptures, if this theory is true, Tozu considers Wolfgang helpless without him. The presence of sheep in the Bible also alludes to Wolfgang's relationship with Eva and Damon, as Damon and Eva represent Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and Damon is also representative of the snake. There is a notable passage in Genesis 3:21 that ties Damon, Eva, and Wolfgang together. "The Lord God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them." It is heavily implied in the Bible that the garments of skin were sheep's skin. After Adam and Eve committed sin, God showed the world that sin can only be forgiven through shedding the blood of the innocent, which is represented by the sheepskin being used to cover Adam and Eve's sin. Eva killing Wolfgang became the first sin of the killing game, and as she and Damon were already the outsiders of the cast, this further enveloped them in sin. Also, in the next major story in the Bible, Cain and Abel, Abel became known as the first victim of murder, and he was a shepherd. Lastly, throughout the Bible, sheep were used as sacrifices, and as the first victim of the killing game, Wolfgang was absolutely a sacrificial lamb. Within the Bible, this metaphor is proven further with Jesus being seen as a sacrifice in Revelation 5:12. When the entire cast discovers that Wolfgang is dead and is experiencing that cacophony of wails, as Damon calls it, I could only think of one word: martyrdom. Wolfgang died a martyr and as a lamb to the slaughter.
No matter how you look at it, from a narrative perspective, Wolfgang was the perfect first victim for Project Eden's Garden. Sure, the Danganronpa series and Fangans have killed characters unexpectedly and have had important characters die early on, but Wolfgang's death genuinely shocked everyone. The writer set him up to be the rival character who was always in opposition with Damon and would play a massive role in the entire story. They set him up as the most rootable character. Hell, he even won the official character popularity contest, Woes and Marches and Rows, in 2023. Even if you didn't like Wolfgang, chances are you were still interested in where his character was going to go. He had such an important impact on every single person in the cast, and Diana's speech cemented his legacy. I would not be surprised if Diana becomes the new rival figure in the story, and that is all because of Wolfgang's role as the beloved leader of the group and his devastating end. What I know for sure is that Project Eden's Garden wouldn't be the same without Wolfgang Akade, and now that he's gone, everything is about to change. If you liked this video, please make sure to give it a like, subscribe to join the Seabunnies, and turn on the bell for notification. Comment down below your thoughts, theories, opinions, whatever you want about Wolfgang and Project Eden's Garden. I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you so much.